Hello and welcome to Channel 17's Town Meeting Television and another in our live 2019 candidate forums. On tonight's show, East District candidates for City Council. Running as a Democrat, we have Richard Deane, and as a progressive, Jack Hanson. Welcome to you both. It's a pleasure sharing the podium with you. I want to thank you both for your service and your willingness to serve our great city. Our forum begins with a 60-second candidate opening statement, followed by a round-robin question and answer. The candidates have been provided with the questions ahead of time. This is also an opportunity for you, our viewing audience, to dial in and ask questions of the candidates themselves. Our phone number is 862-3966. And now, on to our opening statements. Richard Deane, we'll begin with you.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And I also have appreciated the opportunity to serve the residents of Ward 1 and Ward 8 as your East District City Councilor over the past 2 years. I have a deep connection to the city. I grew up here my parents moved here in 1964. I went to high school, Taft School, the middle school as well. Thank you very much. I've lived in this community for many, many, many years. My family came back here 20 years ago after I had moved to Washington, D.C. and Germany, but drawn back here. And that's because this city is such a fantastic place to live. I think we all recognize that. It's been a city of opportunity for me and for my family. My kids now at UVM and one son soon to be at Champlain. And I think the important thing that we have to wrestle with is how to provide that kind of opportunity to people who want to stay here as senior citizens, to young families who want to move here, to young professionals who want to make a career here and a life here. That is really the most important single focusing issue for all of us as we think about how to move forward, make the city move forward in the future. So I've really focused my 2 years on those issues, as well as dealing with climate change and how to make have some kind of effect on this challenge that's in front of all of us as citizens of the world. But certainly here in Burlington, we have some opportunities to make a difference. And my intent is, and if I get another opportunity with another 2 years, to move some initiatives that I've already started forward on those really critical pieces for this city.
Very good. Richard Deane, thank you. Jack Hanson, your opening statement.
Thank you. My name's Jack Hanson. I'm a graduate of UVM from an environmental studies major. I'm a renter on Pearl Street, and I work at Green Mountain Power, helping customers to reduce their fossil fuel use. My father grew up in Burlington, and my parents met at UVM. And I've been really involved with the community as a musician, as a community organizer, while on campus, co-founding the Renewable Energy Network, and staying engaged since then with groups like Sierra Club and 350 Vermont. And also working on restorative justice initiatives. I was part of a Circles of Support and Accountability program to help someone who had been incarcerated kind of reintegrate into the community and get back on their feet and reduce the risk of reoffending. I've also been really engaged with local issues and local politics here in Burlington, and frankly have been disappointed in a number of cases where I saw a lot of community members, including in our district, bring up some very valid concerns with decision-making processes and decisions themselves from City Hall, and seeing those folks being ignored and being disrespected in many cases. So I would like to really focus on not only the issues that I've worked on, such as climate change and social justice and affordability, but also focus on the idea of community engagement and bringing more folks into this process. And I've really tried to get that started with our campaign and with knocking on every door in the district and really having those two-way conversations. So I'm excited to continue that work and hopefully be able to bring it into the City Council.
Very good, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your opening comments. Our phone tree is lighting up like a Christmas tree, so we'll go right to our first caller. Caller, we thank you for dialing in. You are live with Richard Deane and Jack Hanson, candidates for the East District City Council. Do you have a question for our candidates?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Do you have a question for our candidates, caller?
I do. Quick preamble. I feel like diversity makes Burlington a vibrant place. Racial, cultural, economic diversity. I'm curious, Mr. Deane, what you see as your biggest accomplishment, promoting that racial, cultural, and class justice here in Burlington?
Very good. It's a direct question to you, Mr. Deane. Your thoughts on your efforts to bring equality?
Well, thank you. This is a really important question. I think we in Burlington celebrate the fact that we live in a city where we have an incredibly diverse group and populations that come from many places around the world, including Councillor Jiang, who comes to us from Africa. It really is an amazing wealth that we have here in the community. I think the most important thing that we can provide for all people who are coming to us is a diverse and an active economy that allows people to find a job. We also have to have an education system that serves the young families that join us as well.
I'm going to interrupt you. I think he was looking specifically for what you have done.
What I have done,
yes.
Okay. So I have supported, I think, getting back to that point about education, it was my voice, I think, that really was one of the most important in the decision to renew and re-envision Burlington High School. Something that's really important to 21st century learning and providing access for educational opportunity and future success to everyone who comes to us in this city. So if I were to look at and say, support of a strong economy that supports the people who come to us from other nations and other societies, and that piece on the education.
Jack Hanson, your thoughts on your personal efforts for diversity and inclusion in the city?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been on city council, but I've certainly worked on the grassroots level with nonprofit organizations, and within those organizations really doing what we can to incorporate anti-oppression into the work that we do, internally and the way we interact with each other, but also in terms of how we interact with the community. So I think a lot of it has to do with education, especially for me as a white male, it comes down to being proactive about educating myself about systems of oppression and how I can work against those. And in terms of the city council and what I would want to bring there, I think we have to look at systems that are still inequitable in Burlington, such as our outcomes in our school districts and outcomes in the way we police our community. We have a long way to go. So it's about consistent engagement and really putting in the resources long term to be able to combat those issues from a city level.
Very good. Candidates, we're going to move right on to our next caller here. Caller, you're live on the air with our East District City Council candidates. Do you have a question for our candidates?
So one thing I'd like to hear about is the city budget. What is the municipal city budget, and what is your experience of managing large budgets like this one?
Very good. Jack Hanson, we'll begin with you, the city budget and your experience in managing large budgets. Yeah,
I believe it's around $200 million for fiscal year 19, if my numbers are correct and what I've looked at. In terms of my experience managing budgets, I haven't managed a budget of that size, but I've definitely managed budgets before as, co-founder and leader of various student groups in high school and college, and also during my time at VPIRG as well, when I was, running the recruitment budget for our summer Canvas operation, which employs 80 to 100 young people, and it's really one of the great experiences that I've had. I've also was the campaign manager for Chris Pearson's campaign for state senate in 2016, and managed a relatively healthy budget for that, since we had a lot of small contributions coming in from Bernie Sanders' email list. So I've managed some budgets, but not quite on the order of 200 million. At this point.
Richard Deane, your thoughts on the city budget?
So Jack has that right. The 2019 fiscal year budget is around 200 million. 70 million of that is the general fund. About another 90 million of that is with our enterprise funds, which includes the airport, our Burlington Electric Department, which is very, very successful, our water and wastewater system as well. Those are enterprise funds. So I have been very, very attentive to the budgeting process. I've sat through. I do go to the meetings where we're actually discussing what's going on in the budget and what the priorities are. So I certainly have done that. Personally, I am a business owner, part of a group that manages a firm downtown. And we're budgeting every year in terms of our marketing and our investments in the firm. That's something that I've discussed with all of my partners. It's something that we deal with on an annual basis. So I have that. Hopefully that would be $200 million, but it's not. It's much less than that. But essentially, I have the experience through my work at the city council level and on my own personal level, working as a business person to deal with complex budget issues.
Very good. Candidates, we're going to move right on to our next caller. Caller, you're live on the air with East District City Council candidates. What's your question?
Hello, I had asked this question prior to the North District candidates, so I'm going to propose it again. Recently, news broke that a current city council candidate has a history of tweeting sexist and violent comments towards women. This candidate has not pulled out of the race, and the organizations Rights and Democracy, as well as the Progressive Party, have not rescinded their endorsement of this candidate. You've received their Jack, you received the endorsement of these from these groups as well. What do you think of this situation? I'd like to hear from you first. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was. I read the tweets, and it was really disappointing. You know, having gotten to know Mohammed, I was surprised to see that and disappointed. And I think it's really important that we're having this process of accountability and making it clear that those types of statements are completely unacceptable within our community. So I think this is an important moment to be able to highlight that and have this conversation. In terms of what we do from here, I think that's going to be partly up to the campaign, but I think from a community perspective, I would tie it back to a lot of the work I've done around restorative justice, and that is that, if someone has, committed an offense that has harmed people, I think it's important to bring that person into the discussion and work with them to be better going forward. And fortunately, Mohammed is someone who is really doing that work to make up for his past actions and try to be better on issues of misogyny and of sexism. And so it's really important that we keep this dialogue going and also use it as a reminder and as an opportunity that we need to be proactively addressing these issues as a community.
Richard, your thoughts?
Well, I have to admit being shocked by hearing and reading some of the misogynistic comments that came and understood in years past, and a younger person, someone who, a couple of years ago was voicing these things. So I think that's something to be said about maturity and about growing up, and so I think the candidate will have to think about that. What I'm really concerned about, though, and what really gets it raises questions in my mind is the candidate continues to enjoy the endorsement of Rights and Democracy and the Progressive Party, and I know that those are not tenets that were what was voiced in those tweets are not something that Rights and Democracy and the Progressive Party support. So I question what are the values that can they really stand by this, and I have to think and question whether my opponent, who has enjoys their endorsement, really wants that endorsement. If he can't really trust that they believe the things that he does, because I know he believes in the rights of women, and he believes that we all need to be treated fairly.
Thank you, candidates. Caller, just a point of order here in that Mohammed Jafar has addressed those issues directly in our South District Candidate Forum. You are invited to go online and watch that forum and learn his direct response to that question. Moving on now, we've got more callers here. So caller, you're live on the air with our East District City Council candidates. Do you have a question for one of our candidates?
I do. This question was asked in the last forum, and I'd like to ask it again. It's about question number 4, the Downtown Improvement District. The question is, which of you have actually read the charter change language, and what specifics from the plan have informed your opinion on the question? Thank you.
Okay. Jack Hanson, will begin with you on that. Or excuse me, it was your turn to go first. Richard Deane. Your thoughts on the city charter change and the wording?
Right. So, yes, I have read that language, and in fact, I've read it many more times than most because I am part of the Charter Change Committee who's charged with understanding what is being proposed. So, I think I do have a very clear understanding of what's being proposed, and I think what we see is an opportunity for us to take a success, the Church Street Marketplace, that came to us 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago now, and extend that success from 4 blocks to 40 blocks of the downtown. It gives us an opportunity through investments made by the property owners in the downtown to connect the Church Street all the way down to the waterfront, such that the experience of the downtown, safety, enhanced services, a sense of a downtown, extends all the way from our Church Street Marketplace down to the waterfront. The opportunity is there. It's funded not by taxpayers, but by the merchants themselves, the people who are the business owners and property owners on the marketplace. So it's not anything that comes out of the taxpayer's pocket. I think that's fantastic.
Great. Jack, have you read the charter change wording, and how has it informed your decision about it?
Yeah, so yeah, I've read it as well, and I oppose this ballot item. I think this downtown improvement district, first of all, the current model, Church Street Marketplace, is a quasi-city entity. This new model would be a nonprofit entity, so we would be giving up a lot of the ability to control this entity. So I'm not necessarily opposed to expanding it, but giving up the control I think is unnecessary. And I'm also concerned about how downtown improvement districts have played out in other communities where they have, driven up the cost of housing in other communities, and in some cases led to, harassment of homeless or other marginalized people through, private security forces. So I definitely have concerns with it, and I also think that this item was it was irresponsible to put it on the ballot because there hasn't been a deep enough community engagement and education process. When I've gone around knocking on folks' doors, only a couple of people have been aware of what this was. And of those people that were aware, they either didn't know what to think about it or they opposed it. So I haven't met anyone on the doors who actually supports this initiative, and I think it was rushed to put this on the ballot, knowing that we haven't had enough of a discussion as a community.
I have an opportunity to rebut that?
30 seconds, and we'll ask then Jack to respond as well.
Okay.
30 seconds, please.
So the point that Jack is trying to make, that this is somehow a giveaway to the private and privatizing downtown, that's absolutely not true. There are no city assets and public assets that are transferred to the new DID, and there are no governmental responsibilities that are given up to the governing board of the DID. That's just not true. And I can read but I won't. There is a piece here that says that absolutely. The other point about there not being enough time, this has been under discussion for many, many months. I know it's a difficult issue for some. There are some nuances, but I think we need to realize that this is a successful downtown model that we're extending to a larger portion of the downtown.
Jack, a response?
Yeah, so I think the governing board, as I understand it, and again, it's been shifting so much that it's hard to keep track, but it would be an 11-member board, and 5 of those members would be not appointed. 6 of them would be appointed by city councils, but 5 wouldn't. So we are giving up part of that governing structure and losing that control. But also, as I said, there's concerns with how this has played out in other communities. And the biggest point for me is just the fact that, as I said, I haven't talked to anyone on the doors who fully understands and supports this.
We're moving on. We've got callers waiting to dial in and ask questions of our East District City Councilors. Caller, you're live on the air. Do you have a question for our candidates?
Yes, I have a question for Richard. My name's Carter, and recently myself and a group of young renters living in Burlington called you to express our support for Keep Burlington Telecom Local. When I called you, you unfortunately hung up on me and told friends of mine who also called that they were just young people, so they didn't know what they were talking about. And since then, you've actually reached out and apologized, which we all, very much appreciated. But what have you learned about community engagement from this experience, and how can community members like myself trust that you're committed to robust community engagement, even with those who you might disagree with?
Well, Mr. Newbeezer, I appreciate your call. I do agree that there was a time, one phone call that I made or you had with me where at the end of a very, very busy day that I did not treat you as well as I should. I called you the next day and apologized, and I thought you accepted my apology. I don't think there are any other cases that you mentioned past there that's just not the facts at all. I think that I have, in my candidacy as a city councilor, engaged very fully and robustly with the people that I represent. They have every opportunity to talk to me. We talk about city issues that are important. I've heard from many people on both progressive sides and the Democratic side specific issues about my neighborhoods, and have been an advocate for those, addressing those issues in the neighborhoods. A very forceful advocate. So I think I'm doing very well.
Jack Hanson, your thoughts on community engagement?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge for me. It's fundamental, and that's why, as I said, we've been knocking so heavily on the doors and really having those two-way conversations. This is something, you know, having done 2 years at VPIRG, that I really value, is being able to learn from people of all walks of life in the community, and each of those conversations is an opportunity not only to share ideas, but to get feedback and really learn what people are concerned about. And I think when we do that, and when we bring in those different voices, we are able to get to better policy outcomes as a result. So I'm living that out on the campaign, and if elected, would live that out as a city councilor.
Very good. We're moving right on. We have another caller dialing in to ask a question of our city council candidates for East District. Caller, do you have a question, please?
This is Don Schramm.
Hello, Don. Do you have a question for our candidates?
I've lived in Burlington for 37 years. I have a question for Richard. In the NPA forum this past week, you stated that corporations are people too, when defending taking money from smaller corporations. Recently, the Vermont Senate passed a bill that would ban all corporate campaign contributions, even the ones you alluded to the other night. Do you agree or disagree with the Vermont Senate that all corporate campaign contributions should be banned in Vermont?
Good question.
Okay, I do agree that it should be. And perhaps I misspoke and didn't understand the question as fully as I should at the Ward 1, Ward 8 candidates forum. I think the point is that, and the point that I tried to make at the forum, is that there are many people who are business people in this community who they have the right and should have the right to support a candidate that they believe in, that talks about the issues that are important to them. And these are, and I mentioned a few, these are great community members, people who own the ski rack, people who own Lunig's, people who own Sweetwater's. Those are all, part of the fabric of downtown, and I think they should, as members of the community, be able to have a voice.
Mm-hmm. Jack Hanson, your thoughts on the State Senate proposal about campaign contributions?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's exciting. I'm really glad we've taken that step. I think it's a critical one. And I absolutely support eliminating all corporate campaign contributions, and won't ever accept any or seek them out. And I think, yeah, of course, if business owners in the community want to contribute as individuals, of course, I agree with that, certainly. But in terms of business entities themselves contributing, I think that leads to a number of potential problems, or at least even the appearance of conflict of interest. So I think it's very critical to our democracy that we take this step.
Okay. We're moving right along. Another question from a caller in our community. Thank you for dialing in. Listener, do you have a question for our candidates for City Council East District?
Yes, I do. My name's Graham. I live on Pearl Street. I was curious for Mr. Deane. A lot of your campaign literature has talked about your concern about climate change. And for me, this is really an important issue because, as we've seen from the recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, we're now basically down to 12 years to have transformative change in our energy systems. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious what specifically you've done as a city councilor to reduce emissions in Burlington. And then for Mr. Hanson, a question about what policies and programs would you support to reduce emissions in the city?
Very good. Mr. Deane?
Thank you very much for this question. I was hoping we were going to get to this. So specific actions that I've taken as a city councilor is as part of a committee that was looking at our new downtown form-based code. I was very supportive of putting in requirements for green buildings in the downtown. Our downtown buildings must meet a LEED Gold certification, which really helps us. I've been supportive of the district energy system that takes waste that will, if we can make it work, take waste from the waste heat from the McNeil generating plant and use it to heat the hospital, the university, and downtown buildings. And more personally to me is an effort that I have led in the past 2 years called Burlington Wildways, where we're seeking to take the 50% of open and natural lands and 25% of those actually in urban wildlands and connect them together with a trail and shared conservation values so that people can connect directly with the beautiful and treasured wildlands that exist in Burlington and we don't know very much about. It's equitable access to that, and it makes people value and understand what it means to have wildlands right here in Burlington.
Jack?
Great. Yeah, I'm glad we got this question as well. And climate change has been really the biggest issue that I've focused on since high school, and my greatest passion. And it's what I do for a living is working with customers of Green Mountain Power, where I work to drastically reduce their fossil fuel consumption and their greenhouse gas emissions. So I would be excited to really bring that lens to the City Council. And we've done a lot in Burlington, and we've come a long way. But we still have a really long way to go, and it's important to really keep focused and keep pushing to get to net zero by 2030, as Burlington Electric Department has discussed. And we're going to be getting back, a report from economic consulting firm on different pathways to get there. And I think this is an opportunity to, as I mentioned before, open it up to the community, basically choose a pathway. But one of the ideas that I've been really promoting that I'm excited about is shifting, looking at energy efficiency in buildings and looking at how inefficient so many of the buildings in our district are, because the burden of the heating bill falls on the renter rather than on the landlord, and so there's not an incentive for the landlord to make those upgrades. I think we need to shift that and look at what was done in Boulder, Colorado, where they did actually shift that. So that's been one of the biggest items that I've been talking about from an affordability perspective and a climate perspective.
Thank you, candidates. We'll have one more question here before our closing comments. And this question is very personal for us here at Channel 17 and public access in general throughout the state of Vermont. The FCC is considering doing away with the regulation that requires cable subscribers to pay a $3 access fee, which actually funds public access. If that happens, that could be the death knell for public access here in the state of Vermont. What are your thoughts on the future of permanent funding for public access? And Jack, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, well, this is great, and this is a great community service that we have, throughout the state, and that we're experiencing right now. And I think we're going to need to step up on the state and local level to make sure that funding is there, whether that's through pressuring our telecoms to do so or at the state level. If we can't do either of those, we have to look at what the city can do to make sure that we keep these programs alive that are so important to so many of us.
Very good. Jack? Yes, Richard, excuse me.
Thank you. I agree with Jack. I think that it's clear, as I see Channel 17 at the City Council meetings late at night, covering this for everyone, covering the important issues of the day, that we need to preserve funding and keep this available to our community. I think that funding needs to come from the state, if possible, if we can convince the feds to continue their funding somehow, although I'm skeptical that will happen. But I think a point that was made previously is that the internet is really where we're headed, and that the funding needs to somehow come from there. I would not, my last choice would be to somehow make this come from city taxpayers. I feel as though the burdens that we are looking at today are high enough. Certainly we're facing more in the future, so I don't think that would be my last choice as to where to go.
Very good. Time for our closing statements from our candidates, and Jack Hanson, we'll begin with you. 60 seconds, please.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thanks to both of you for engaging in this with me. This is a great opportunity to really talk about how we can move forward on these issues. And I'm looking to not only address these key issues and be someone in the City Council that would fight for you, but also someone who really would talk to you and engage you on a deep level, and bring folks into the process early on, and a diversity of voices, and really being proactive so that we can get better outcomes. And also, I would want to bring it back, to just my lived experience in the district as a young person and as a renter trying to make it work here. I think one of the biggest things we want to do in Burlington is be able to attract and retain young people to lay down roots here moving forward. And I think I have the ability to understand what those challenges that we face are and how we can actually do that. Having seen friends leave the community and being priced out, and having seen folks that were able to make it work. So I think that's a perspective that is really needed on the City Council, and I would be so fortunate to be able to bring that in. Thanks.
And Richard Deane, your closing comments, please.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share a podium with Jack, who's I deeply respect. I think this is a great dialogue. I think we share many of the same values. In fact, I think we share most of the same values as candidates, a belief in this community, a concern about the environment, and wanting to make a difference. And I think that what I can bring that perhaps Jack can't quite bring is not just a few years of lived experience, but an entire lifetime of lived experience in this community. I am someone who has a business here. I've raised my family here, and I've made important changes and important improvements in the city as I've worked for the past 2 years as the East District City Councilor. I am committed to having more affordable housing in the city, making sure that landlords are responsible and providing good housing and opportunities for housing within our communities. And I'm also committed to having the University of Vermont do what they can to take the pressure off our neighborhoods. So I would welcome the opportunity if you would support me to represent you for another 2 years, and thank you again.
My thanks to our candidates, Jack Hanson and Richard Deane. It's a pleasure sharing the stage with you tonight. Best of luck to both of you on Election Day. A reminder to you, our viewers, that early voting has begun. You can contact your local town clerk and pick up an early ballot today. And reminder to join us for election night coverage beginning at 7 p.m. on Town Meeting Day, Tuesday, March 5th, right here on Channel 17. For all of us at CCTV, I'm Matt Kelly. Thank you for watching. Good night.